The sun barely peeked through the worn curtains when the alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 a.m. Anita Thompson reached out with a tired hand to silence it. She hadn't slept well, thinking about what lay ahead. Today was her court date, and everything depended on it. As she swung her legs out of bed, Anita glanced at the stack of papers on her nightstand. Eviction notices, bank statements, and job termination letters, each one telling the story of the last 6 months of her life. She picked up the photo of her daughter Lily, smiling with 2 missing front teeth. That smile gave her strength. The small apartment was quiet as Anita tiptoed to the kitchen. She started the coffee maker, a luxury she could barely afford now, but necessary for today. While waiting for it to brew, she reviewed her documents one more time. Everything had to be perfect. Her hands trembled slightly as she organized the papers into a neat folder. 6 months ago, life had been different. Anita worked as an assistant manager at the local grocery store for 8 years. She was good at her job, reliable and respected. But when the store changed ownership, the new management brought their own team. Anita found herself unemployed with just 2 weeks' notice. The savings she had carefully built up disappeared quickly. First went the car repairs, then Lily's school supplies, and soon the rent became impossible to manage. Her landlord, Mr. Peterson, had been understanding at first, but patience wore thin as the months passed. Anita heard soft footsteps and turned to see Lily standing in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, why are you up so early?" "I have an important meeting today, sweetie," Anita said, forcing a smile. "Remember I told you? I'm going to talk to some people about keeping our home." Lily nodded seriously. At 8 years old, she understood more than Anita wished she had to. Will we have to move again? The question hit Anita's heart like a physical blow. They had already moved twice in the past year, each time to a smaller place. "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we don't, baby." After getting Lily ready for school, Anita stood in front of her closet. She needed to look presentable but professional. Her best suit was 5 years old but still fit well. She ironed it carefully, making sure there wasn't a single wrinkle. Appearance mattered in court, she'd been told. As she got dressed, Anita thought about the free legal aid lawyer she'd met with last week. He seemed overwhelmed with cases but had given her some basic advice. Be respectful, tell the truth, and bring all documentation. He couldn't represent her in court due to his heavy caseload, so she would have to speak for herself. The morning routine continued. Breakfast for Lily, checking her homework, brushing and braiding her hair. Normal things that felt precious now that everything was uncertain. Anita packed Lily's lunch, adding an extra apple even though money was tight. She wanted her daughter to have something good today. At the bus stop, Lily hugged her mother extra tight. "Good luck, Mommy. You're the bravest person I know." Anita watched the yellow school bus disappear around the corner, then took a deep breath. She had 2 hours before her court appearance. The walk to the courthouse would take 40 minutes. She couldn't afford bus fare for herself after buying Lily's weekly pass. As she walked through the morning streets, Anita practiced what she would say. She would explain about the job loss, show her job search records, present her budget plans. She would ask for more time to get back on her feet. She had even secured a job interview for next week, if only the judge would give her a chance. The courthouse came into view, its imposing stone facade making her stomach twist with nerves. Anita clutched her folder tighter and whispered a quiet prayer. Everything she and Lily had rode on what would happen in the next few hours. Today would indeed change everything, though not in any way Anita could have imagined as she climbed those courthouse steps. The courthouse lobby was cold and intimidating. Anita joined the line for security screening, her hands shaking slightly as she placed her folder on the conveyor belt. The security guard barely looked at her as he waved her through. She found the directory and located housing court on the 3rd floor. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors opened, Anita stepped into a hallway filled with worried faces. People sat on benches, some talking quietly with lawyers, others alone like her. She found room 304 and took a deep breath before entering. The courtroom was smaller than she expected, but no less intimidating. Rows of wooden benches faced an elevated platform where the judge would sit. The court clerk, a stern-looking woman, checked names off a list. "Name?" she asked without looking up. "Anita Thompson," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Speak up," the clerk snapped. "Case number?" "85789," Anita said louder, feeling her cheeks warm. "Take a seat. Judge Harrison will call your case." Anita found a spot in the third row. Around her, people whispered nervously or shuffled papers. She clutched her folder, reviewing her documents one more time. Everything was there: proof of job applications, bank statements showing her attempts to pay, character references from neighbors. The side door opened, and everyone stood as Judge Harrison entered. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with gray hair and sharp features. His black robe seemed to make him even more imposing. "Be seated," he said in a tone that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. Anita watched as he handled the first few cases. Her heart sank with each one. Judge Harrison barely listened to people's explanations, cutting them off mid-sentence. "Pay what you owe or get out," he told one elderly man. To a young couple with a baby, he said, "Should have thought about that before falling behind on rent." When her case was called, Anita's legs felt like jelly as she approached the small table facing the judge. Mr. Peterson, her landlord, was already there with his lawyer. "Case 85789, Peterson versus Thompson," the clerk announced. Judge Harrison looked down at his papers, then at Anita. "Ms. Thompson, you owe 3 months' rent. What's your excuse?" Anita cleared her throat. "Your Honor, I lost my job 6 months ago when new management took over the grocery store where I worked for 8 years. I've been actively searching for employment and have an interview next week. I'm asking for an extension too." "Everyone has a sub-story," Judge Harrison interrupted. "Did you pay your rent?" "No, Your Honor, but I have documentation showing." "Simple question, Ms. Thompson. Yes or no?" "No, but—" "Then you have no case." He turned to the landlord's lawyer. "Judgment for the plaintiff. Eviction granted." Tears welled up in Anita's eyes. "Please, Your Honor, I have a daughter. We have nowhere to go. I just need a little more time. I've never been late with rent before this. If you could just look at my employment history." Her voice cracked as tears began to fall. She fumbled with her folder, papers spilling onto the table. "I have everything here. Please just give me a chance to show you." That's when it happened. Judge Harrison leaned back in his chair and laughed. Not a small chuckle, but a full, mocking laugh that echoed through the courtroom. "Ms. Thompson, crime won't pay your rent. Neither will these papers. You had your chance." The courtroom fell silent. Even the clerk looked uncomfortable. The landlord shifted in his seat, avoiding eye contact. Several people in the gallery gasped quietly. Anita stood there, humiliated, tears streaming down her face. She had prepared for many outcomes, but not this, not cruelty, not mockery. She tried to gather her scattered papers with shaking hands. "Next case," Judge Harrison called out, still smirking. As Anita turned to leave, she caught the sympathetic looks from others in the courtroom. An older woman handed her a tissue. A young man helped collect her dropped papers, but nothing could ease the crushing weight of what had just happened. Just as she reached for the courtroom door, it swung open from the outside. Someone was about to enter, someone whose arrival would change everything. But in that moment, all Anita could think about was how she would tell Lily they were losing their home. The courtroom door swung open with such force that everyone turned to look. Anita, still wiping tears from her face, stepped aside as a woman in an elegant navy suit walked in. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Even Judge Harrison looked up from his papers. The woman moved with confidence, her heels clicking purposefully on the polished floor. She was tall, with perfectly styled hair and an air of authority that commanded attention. 2 assistants followed behind her, carrying briefcases and looking equally professional. "Your Honor," the court clerk stammered, clearly recognizing the newcomer. "Senator Johnson is here." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Senator Katherine Johnson was a well-known figure in the state, famous for her work on social justice and housing reform. What was she doing in this small housing court? Judge Harrison straightened in his chair, his smirk disappearing. "Senator Johnson, this is unexpected. We weren't notified of any official visit today." The senator ignored his comment and scanned the room. Her eyes landed on Anita, who was still standing near the door, papers clutched to her chest. Recognition flashed across the senator's face. "Anita?" "Anita Thompson." Senator Johnson's voice was warm but surprised. Anita looked up, confused. The senator was walking toward her now, her expression softening from professional to personal. "It is you, from Central High School." Suddenly, the memories flooded back. Katherine Johnson, Katie back then, had been in Anita's class. They weren't close friends, but Anita remembered her well. Katie had been the quiet, studious girl who often sat alone in the cafeteria. "Katie?" Anita whispered, hardly believing this powerful woman was the same shy girl from high school. The senator reached out and gently touched Anita's arm. "What are you doing here? Are you all right?" She noticed the tears, the scattered papers, and the defeated posture. Her eyes narrowed as she began to understand the situation. I just lost my eviction case," Anita managed to say, fresh tears threatening to fall. Senator Johnson's expression changed. She turned to face Judge Harrison, who was watching the exchange with growing unease. "Your Honor, may I ask what just transpired in this courtroom?" Judge Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "Senator, this is a private proceeding. The case has been decided. Ms. Thompson failed to pay her rent and—" "I heard laughter," the senator interrupted, her voice now sharp. "I was in the hallway and heard laughter coming from this courtroom. Whose was it?" The silence that followed was deafening. The court clerk looked down at her desk. The landlord's lawyer suddenly found his shoes very interesting. Several people in the gallery exchanged knowing glances. "I asked a question, Your Honor," Senator Johnson pressed. "In my years on the Judiciary Committee, I've never known court proceedings to be a source of amusement." Judge Harrison's face reddened. "Senator, I assure you, everything has been handled according to proper procedure." "Is that so?" She turned to the gallery. "Did anyone here witness what happened?" An elderly man in the front row slowly raised his hand. The judge laughed at her. "Ma'am." When she started crying, he laughed. A woman nodded. "It's true. She was trying to explain her situation, and he wouldn't listen. Then he mocked her." More voices joined in, people finding courage in the senator's presence. "He does this all the time," someone said. "He never listens to anyone." Senator Johnson's face hardened. She turned to her assistants. "Please document everything these witnesses are saying." Then to Anita, her voice gentle again. "Tell me exactly what happened here today." Anita glanced nervously at Judge Harrison, who was now visibly sweating. The senator noticed and stepped between them, blocking the judge's intimidating stare. "It's all right, Anita. I'm here now." With encouragement, Anita began to speak. She told about losing her job, her efforts to find work, the documentation she brought, and how the judge had dismissed everything without even looking at it. Her voice grew stronger as she described the moment he laughed at her tears. The courtroom was completely silent except for Anita's voice and the scratch of the assistant's pen taking notes. Judge Harrison sat frozen, his earlier arrogance completely gone. The balance of power in the room had shifted dramatically. Senator Johnson listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each word. When Anita finished, the senator nodded slowly. "I see. Well, Your Honor, it seems we need to have a serious discussion about how justice is administered in this courtroom." Senator Johnson turned back to Anita, her expression softening. "Do you remember sophomore year, Anita? The winter when I had nowhere to go for Christmas break?" Anita's eyes widened with recognition. The memory came rushing back. Katie, the quiet girl whose parents were going through a messy divorce. She had planned to stay alone in the school dormitory during the holidays. "You invited me to spend Christmas with your family," the senator continued, her voice warm with gratitude. "Your mother treated me like her own daughter. I've never forgotten that kindness." The courtroom listened in stunned silence as this powerful woman shared a personal story. Judge Harrison fidgeted with his gavel, clearly uncomfortable with where this was heading. "Your mother made that special sweet potato pie," Senator Johnson smiled. "And you gave me your favorite scarf because you noticed I didn't have warm clothes. Do you remember?" Anita nodded, tears in her eyes again, but this time they were different. "Mom always said we should help others when we can." "She was right," the senator replied. "And now it's my turn to help you." She turned to face Judge Harrison, her professional demeanor returning. "Your Honor, I'd like to understand your decision-making process in this case. Did you review Ms. Thompson's documentation?" Judge Harrison cleared his throat. Senator, as I mentioned, the case is straightforward. Rent wasn't paid. That's not what I asked, she interrupted firmly. Did you review her documentation? Yes or no? The law is clear about non-payment. Yes or no, Your Honor? The judge's shoulders slumped slightly. No, I did not review the documentation. A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. Senator Johnson's eyes narrowed. So you made a ruling without examining the evidence presented. In cases of clear non-payment, every citizen deserves to have their evidence considered. The senator cut him off. That's the foundation of our justice system. She turned to her assistants. Please note that Judge Harrison admitted to ruling without reviewing evidence. The assistant nodded, writing quickly. Senator Johnson continued, I sit on the State Judiciary Committee, Your Honor. We oversee judicial conduct and ensure fair treatment for all citizens. What I've witnessed today is deeply concerning. She walked over to Anita and gently took the folder of documents from her hands. May I? Anita nodded. The senator opened the folder and began examining the contents. Job termination notice due to change in ownership. 8 years of employment with excellent reviews. 47 job applications submitted in 6 months. Interview scheduled for next week. She looked up at the judge. This is evidence of someone actively trying to improve their situation, not someone avoiding responsibility. She continued reading. Budget plans, payment proposals, character references. The senator's voice grew stronger with each document. Your Honor, this folder contains exactly the kind of evidence that should be carefully considered before making a life-altering decision. Judge Harrison's face had gone pale. Senator, perhaps we could revisit. Oh, we'll do more than revisit, she replied. This case will be reviewed properly, and so will your conduct. She turned to the court clerk. I want the transcript of today's proceedings, including witness statements about the judge's behavior. The clerk nodded nervously and began gathering papers. Senator Johnson addressed the courtroom. Has anyone else experienced similar treatment from Judge Harrison? Hands slowly went up around the room. An elderly man spoke first. He laughed at me too when I explained about my medical bills. A young mother added, he wouldn't look at my paperwork either. Said it was a waste of time. More stories emerged, painting a pattern of dismissive behavior and lack of empathy. The senator's assistants documented everything while Judge Harrison sat in silence, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. Anita, Senator Johnson said, turning back to her old classmate, your kindness years ago made a difference in my life. You showed me that there are good people in the world who care about others. That inspired me to go into public service to help people who need someone to stand up for them. She placed a hand on Anita's shoulder. Today, I get to return that kindness. We're going to make sure you get a fair hearing, and we're going to address the systemic problems in this courtroom. For the first time that day, hope flickered in Anita's eyes. The woman she had helped years ago was now in a position to help her, proving that kindness, no matter how small, can create ripples that return when least expected. Judge Harrison's hands trembled slightly as he shuffled papers on his desk. The confident man who had laughed at Anita just minutes ago now looked small and uncertain. Senator Johnson stood firm, her presence filling the courtroom with an authority that overshadowed his position. Your Honor, the senator began, her voice calm but firm, I believe we need to start this case over. This time, with proper consideration of all evidence. The judge dabbed his forehead with a handkerchief. Senator, while I appreciate your concern, court procedures must be followed. Exactly, she interrupted. And those procedures include reviewing evidence before making a ruling. You've admitted you failed to do that. The landlord's lawyer stood up nervously. If I may, Your Honor, perhaps we could discuss a settlement. Sit down. Judge Harrison snapped, his composure cracking. Then, catching himself, he added more quietly, Please, let me handle this. Senator Johnson walked to Anita's documentation spread across the table. Let's review this properly, shall we? She picked up the termination letter. Ms. Thompson worked at the same job for 8 years. Excellent performance reviews. Terminated only because of new ownership. That's not irresponsibility, Your Honor. That's unfortunate circumstances. She held up the stack of job applications. 47 applications in 6 months. That's almost 2 per week. This shows dedication and effort. She turned to Anita. "Tell us about your job search." Anita stepped forward, finding strength in the senator's support. "I've applied everywhere: stores, offices, restaurants. I've had several interviews, but many places aren't hiring full-time to avoid paying benefits. I have an interview next week for an assistant manager position at the downtown mall." "And if you get this job?" Senator Johnson asked. "I can catch up on rent within 2 months. I've already worked out a payment plan. It's all in those papers," Anita replied, pointing to her folder. The senator nodded and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of evidence that deserves consideration. Ms. Thompson isn't avoiding her responsibilities. She's fighting to meet them despite challenging circumstances." Judge Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "Well, perhaps I was hasty in my initial assessment." "Hasty?" Senator Johnson raised an eyebrow. "You laughed at a struggling mother's tears. That's not hasty. That's cruel." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. People nodded in agreement, emboldened by someone finally challenging the judge's behavior. "I want to address something else," the senator continued. "Several people here have shared similar experiences with you. This appears to be a pattern of behavior, not an isolated incident." The judge's face flushed red. "Senator, you're overstepping your boundaries." "Am I?" She pulled out her phone. "Because I can call the Chief Justice right now. As a member of the Judiciary Committee, I have that authority. Would you prefer that?" Judge Harrison slumped in his chair. "What do you want me to do?" "First, apologize to Ms. Thompson. Then review her case properly. And finally, we need to discuss your future conduct on the bench." The courtroom fell silent. All eyes turned to Judge Harrison. He looked around the room, seeing the faces of people he had dismissed and humiliated. Finally, his gaze settled on Anita. "Ms. Thompson," he began, his voice lacking its earlier arrogance, "I apologize for my behavior. It was unprofessional and unkind." He paused, swallowing hard. "I will review your documentation thoroughly." For the next 30 minutes, Judge Harrison actually read through Anita's papers. The courtroom watched in amazement as he examined each document carefully. Senator Johnson stood nearby, ensuring he gave proper attention to every page. Finally, the judge looked up. "Based on this evidence, I'm reversing my previous decision. Ms. Thompson has demonstrated significant effort to meet her obligations despite circumstances beyond her control." He turned to the landlord. "Mr. Peterson, given Ms. Thompson's 8-year history of timely payments prior to her job loss and her documented efforts to find employment, I'm ordering a 60-day extension. If Ms. Thompson secures employment and begins the proposed payment plan within this period, the eviction will be suspended." Tears of relief streamed down Anita's face. The courtroom erupted in applause, quickly silenced by the judge's gavel, though with notably less force than before. Senator Johnson smiled warmly at Anita. "Justice isn't just about following rules. It's about understanding human circumstances. Today, we've corrected an injustice." The judge remained silent, knowing his career would face serious scrutiny after today. The mighty had indeed fallen, and the humble had been lifted up, all because someone with power chose to use it for good. After the courtroom cleared, Senator Johnson invited Anita to her office in the State Building. The contrast between the cold courtroom and the warm, welcoming office was striking. Photos of community events lined the walls, and a small play area in the corner showed the senator understood the challenges of working parents. "Please, sit down," Senator Johnson said, gesturing to a comfortable chair. "Would you like some coffee? Water?" Anita accepted a glass of water, her hands still shaking slightly from the morning's events. "I don't know how to thank you," she began, but the senator waved her hand. "No thanks needed. This is what I'm here for. Now let's talk about your situation beyond just the rent issue." Over the next hour, they discussed Anita's job search, her daughter's school, and her financial challenges. The senator made phone calls, connecting Anita with job placement services and financial counseling programs. "There's a new initiative I'm working on," the senator explained, pulling out a folder. "It helps people who've lost jobs due to company changes. You're exactly the kind of person this program is designed for." Meanwhile, back at the courthouse, Judge Harrison's troubles were just beginning. Word of the morning's events spread quickly through the legal community. By afternoon, the Chief Justice had called an emergency meeting of the Judicial Ethics Committee. 3 days later, the local news reported that Judge Harrison was under investigation. Citizens came forward with their own stories of dismissive treatment and prejudiced behavior. The court system announced a review of all his recent eviction cases. Anita's case became a turning point. The state launched an audit of housing court procedures, leading to new guidelines requiring judges to review all evidence before making decisions. Training programs on empathy and cultural sensitivity became mandatory for all court officials. The following week, Anita sat in the waiting room of Davidson's department store wearing her best suit. The interview for the assistant manager position went better than she could have hoped. The hiring manager, Ms. Rodriguez, was impressed by Anita's experience and determination. "I heard about what happened in court," Ms. Rodriguez said near the end of the interview. "Senator Johnson's office called to verify your interview appointment. That kind of advocacy speaks volumes about your character." 2 days later, Anita received the call. She got the job, with a salary even better than her previous position. The first person she called was Senator Johnson. "That's wonderful news," the senator exclaimed. "I knew you'd get it. Your determination is inspiring." Within a month, Anita had started her payment plan with Mr. Peterson. To everyone's surprise, the landlord apologized for pursuing eviction so aggressively. "I should have been more understanding," he admitted. "The way the judge treated you wasn't right. I'm sorry I was part of that." Judge Harrison's fate was sealed when the investigation revealed years of biased decisions. He was removed from the bench, required to attend extensive retraining, and reassigned to administrative duties away from direct public interaction. The message was clear. Those in power must use it responsibly and with compassion. The ripple effects continued. Other judges began taking more time with cases, listening to people's stories, and considering circumstances beyond just the legal facts. Court-watching programs were established, where community volunteers could observe proceedings and report concerning behavior. Anita became an advocate for others facing housing challenges. She volunteered with tenant rights organizations, sharing her story and helping people prepare for court appearances. "Don't give up," she would tell them. "Make sure your voice is heard. And if someone tries to silence you, speak louder." The local community center invited her to speak at their monthly meeting. Standing before a room full of people, Anita felt nervous but determined. "What happened to me could happen to anyone," she said, "but what matters is that we stand up for each other. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places, from connections we made years ago. That's why we should always choose kindness." Senator Johnson attended the meeting, sitting quietly in the back. As Anita spoke about the importance of compassion in the justice system, the senator smiled, remembering the shy high school girl who had shared her family's Christmas dinner with a lonely classmate. The wheel of kindness had come full circle, and its impact was spreading throughout the community, changing systems and touching lives in ways no one could have predicted that morning in courtroom 304. 6 months later, Anita stood in her kitchen making breakfast, a smile on her face as she listened to Lily chattering about her school project. The morning sun streamed through clean windows, and the coffee maker hummed peacefully. Everything felt different now, not just their circumstances, but their entire outlook on life. "Mom, Ms. Rodriguez says you're the best assistant manager they've ever had," Lily announced proudly, spreading jam on her toast. "She told me at the store picnic last weekend." Anita laughed softly. "Did she now? Well, I just try to treat everyone with respect. That's all." The apartment looked different too. Not because they had bought expensive things, but because the weight of worry no longer hung in the air. Bills were paid on time, food filled the refrigerator, and most importantly, they felt secure. At work, Anita had become known for her fair treatment of employees and customers alike. She remembered her own struggles and made sure to listen when someone needed help. Just last week, she had worked out a payment plan for a customer who had fallen on hard times, much like she once had. Senator Johnson visited the store occasionally, always greeting Anita with genuine warmth. Their relationship had grown beyond that courtroom moment into a real friendship. They met for coffee monthly, discussing community issues and ways to help others facing similar challenges. The housing court reform bill passed yesterday, the senator told her during their latest meeting. "Your case was cited multiple times during the debates. You've helped change things for thousands of people." Anita could hardly believe it. "I never imagined that such a terrible day could lead to so much good." "That's how change happens," Senator Johnson replied. "Someone stands up, speaks out, and others find their courage too." The former Judge Harrison now worked in the court's administrative office, filing papers and managing schedules. Occasionally, Anita would see him when she volunteered at the legal aid clinic. The first time they crossed paths, he stopped and looked at her. "Miss Thompson," he said quietly, "I want you to know that I've learned from what happened. I'm truly sorry for how I treated you and others." Anita nodded. "I appreciate that. I hope you use this experience to do better." He had indeed changed. Reports from his colleagues suggested he now advocated for fairer treatment of all people in the court system, using his experience as a cautionary tale during training sessions. The legal aid clinic where Anita volunteered had grown significantly. With Senator Johnson's support, they had secured funding to help more people navigate housing court. Anita spent Saturday mornings there, helping people organize their documents and prepare their cases. "Remember," she would tell them, "you have rights. Don't let anyone make you feel small for asking for help or time to get back on your feet." One Saturday, a young father came in, worried about eviction after losing his job. Anita recognized the fear in his eyes. She had lived it. She spent extra time with him, reviewing his papers and explaining the process. "Will the judge listen to me?" he asked nervously. "They have to now," Anita assured him. "And if they don't, there are people watching to make sure they do." Lily had started a kindness club at school, inspired by her mother's experience. The children did small acts of kindness, helping classmates with homework, sharing lunch with those who forgot theirs, writing cheerful notes to teachers and staff. "Mom says kindness comes back to you," Lily explained to her class, "like a circle that keeps going around." On the anniversary of that fateful court date, Anita received a letter from the State Bar Association. She had been nominated for their Community Service Award, recognized for her volunteer work and advocacy for housing rights. As she read the letter to Lily that evening, Anita reflected on the journey. From that humiliating moment in court to becoming a voice for others, it seemed almost unbelievable. "You know what I learned, sweetheart?" she said to Lily. "Sometimes our worst days lead to our greatest purpose. And the kindness we show others has a way of finding its way back to us when we need it most." Lily hugged her mother tight. "I'm proud of you, Mom. You didn't just save our home, you helped save lots of homes." Anita held her daughter close, grateful for second chances, unexpected allies, and the power of compassion to change not just individual lives, but entire systems. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but now she faced them with hope, surrounded by a community that had learned to stand up for what was right.